You're listening to part 2 of Crafting a Killer, the Harvey Carignan story. Catherine Sue Miller's body was found on June 4th, 1973, in the Mission Beach area of the Tulalip Reservation, north of Seattle. 2 teenage boys spotted the body, wrapped in a black plastic tarp, about 100 feet from Waterworks Road. She had been stripped of her clothes, and her body was severely decomposed. At first, authorities weren't certain that this was 15-year-old Catherine Miller, but they had a hunch. Kathy, as her friends and family called her, had disappeared 1 month earlier from a North Seattle department store parking lot. She had gone there for a job interview. Kathy had seen a help wanted ad in a local newspaper and called the owner of a nearby service station who placed the ad. She was calling on behalf of her boyfriend, who was looking for a summer job. The owner was Harvey Carignan. He told her he was hiring girls for the position, too, so they arranged to meet, not at the service station, where a job interview would normally take place. Instead, they agreed to meet in a department store parking lot near Kathy's school. A friend joined her for a while, but the service station owner didn't show up on time, and that friend left. That was the last time anyone saw Kathy alive. That evening, Kathy's mother called the number on the help wanted ad. She knew the owner of the service station had arranged to meet her daughter in a department store parking lot. She thought it was strange, potentially dangerous even. She had warned Kathy against it and hoped her daughter had taken that warning to heart. But now she was looking for her missing girl, and she knew there was a chance Kathy had gone anyway. Harvey told Kathy's mother that she never showed up. Her school books were found the next day in Everett, Washington, about 20 miles south of where her body was eventually found. Investigators quickly honed in on Harvey. Here was a guy in his 40s with a criminal history who arranged to meet with a 15-year-old girl in a parking lot about a service station job. And then she went missing. Turning to Harvey was a logical early step in the investigation, and detectives were confident they were on the right course. Harvey was brought in for questioning. He didn't deny speaking with Kathy on the phone or arranging the job interview in the parking lot. But like he told Kathy's mom, he said Kathy never showed up. Detectives weren't buying it, but there wasn't enough to obtain a search warrant, much less an arrest. They needed a body. And then she was found. The dental records confirmed the body found in the Tulalip Reservation was Kathy. An autopsy report showed she died from blunt force trauma to the back of the head. From there, the investigation into Harvey Carignan really took off. Eyewitnesses placed a vehicle matching the description of his yellow pickup truck around the time she went missing near the area where her body was found. The black tarp used to wrap Kathy's body was consistent with black plastic tarp found at his service station, but they couldn't match the exact shape of the tears together. The circumstantial evidence was piling up, but that wasn't going to be their smoking gun. Search warrants executed at his facility and on his vehicles didn't turn up any physical evidence either. A month had passed. It had all been scrubbed clean. Harvey continued to deny any involvement in Kathy's death, and investigators didn't have enough evidence to charge him. They had to let him go. At the same time, his wife Marlene, who had stood by his side throughout the investigation into Kathy's death, had finally left him. So he took off to his old stomping grounds, Minneapolis, Minnesota. The inability to charge Harvey crushed Kathy's mother, Mary Miller. She firmly believed Harvey Carignan had taken her little girl's life. According to Ann Rule's book, it was devastating for the investigators, too. They felt like they had failed. And like Mary, they had no doubt Harvey had killed Kathy. They just couldn't prove it. But they could warn Minneapolis police that a dangerous man was headed their way. Harvey had not been convicted of killing Kathy, but he had been convicted of murder before, when he was 22. The murder conviction was only part of the picture that made up Harvey's past. There was everything that had come before it, the experiences and behavior that laid the foundation and helped craft Harvey into the killer he would become. The killer who would go on to Minneapolis with his hammer to kill and torment more women. The more I dug into Harvey Carignan's story, the more curious I became. How did Harvey become Harv the Hammer? I mean, what causes someone to turn out that way? Is it a biological predisposition? Are killers just born that way? Or can it be attributed to situations and circumstances a person experiences as a child? Or maybe it's a little bit of both. I wanted to hear from an expert in this field, and I quickly found Dr. Louis Schlesinger, who is just that. He's a forensic psychologist and professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. He spent decades studying serial sexual murderers and has worked with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit on research into those types of crimes and criminals.
The question is, why is someone, how did that happen? How did the person come to be a serial sexual murderer? And most people want to try to understand it by looking at their background, into their childhood, into their development. And you hear this all the time. Why did he kill these women?
In one of Dr. Schlesinger's books, he lays out 10 ominous signs of a sexually motivated murderer. I'm going to list them. Childhood abuse, inappropriate maternal sexual conduct, pathological lying and manipulation, sadistic fantasy with a compulsion to act, animal cruelty, particularly toward cats, need to control and dominate others, repetitive fire setting, voyeurism, fetishism, and sexual burglary, unprovoked attacks on females associated with generalized misogynist emotions, evidence of ritualistic or signature behavior. Those are the 10.
And this is, commonalities in the background of sexual murderers. Now, abuse is number one, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional. But that doesn't mean that you're going to grow up to be a sexual murderer. In other words, if somebody is abused, does that mean he's going to grow up to be an abuser? The answer is no. But if you look at those people who are abusers, a vast majority of them have abuse in their background as well. So are there commonalities in the background of serial sexual murders? It's very, very difficult to say with any type of credibility. We used to think, in fact, I wrote a book with my late colleague back in 1981, which is how long I've been doing this craziness. The book was titled Psychopathology of Homicide. And we postulated a displaced matricide theory of sexual murder, meaning the person is symbolically killing his mother, a displaced matricide. It sounded good. It was consistent with psychodynamic, psychoanalytic theory at the time. But I know now with 40 years more experience, it's incorrect. It sounds good, but it's incorrect. Are there cases of sexual murderers who have disturbed relationships with their mothers? Yes, yes. But there's also cases where that does not occur as well. So anyway, I know that there is a strong urge for a watershed event to explain this abnormal behavior. The answer is, from a scientific, credible perspective, you're not going to find a watershed event. But I understand it. Why people they want to understand, how did this happen? But you're not going to find a watershed event, yet people continue to look for it, like you did.
So basically, on their own, one is not a standalone indicator of a potential serial sexual killer. It is the combination of these behaviors and characteristics that can be significant. But even a combination of the behaviors doesn't necessarily mean the person is going to become a serial sexual murderer. According to Dr. Schlesinger, there's more to it.
The best explanation that I believe is a biopsychosocial explanation with a heavy emphasis on neurobiology, and whether that neurobiological problem is chemical, hormonal, electrical, head injury, a combination of factors, and poor traumatic, upbringing and terrible parenting and psychosocial problems. It certainly doesn't help, but it does not. That is not dispositive for making a serial sexual murderer.
Dr. Schlesinger believes the neurological component is critical because sexual instinct is biologically determined.
Your human sexuality is very, very much biologically based, neurobiologically based. And so in order for someone to become a sexual murderer, lots of things have to go wrong. Whether it's chemical, hormonal, head injury, plus psychosocial stressors and those factors to go wrong. And that's the reason that serial sexual murder is extremely rare. And it's been present in every country, in every culture since pre-modern time.
A lot of things have to go wrong. Clearly, in Harvey Carignan's case, they did. From the start, Harvey was unwelcome in this world. He was born on May 18th, 1927, in Fargo, to Mary Bellinger, an unwed mother, an illegitimate child in 1920s North Dakota. His mere existence was shrouded in societal judgment. His biological father was rumored to be a local doctor who his mother worked for as a housekeeper. That's according to Jennifer Furio, an author who published letters Harvey wrote to her from prison in the 90s. When Harvey was 1, his mother married August Carignan on August 26, 1928, in Pembina County, North Dakota, and Harvey took his last name. 2 years later, when Harvey was 3, they moved to Baku, North Dakota, a township with a population of 50 in Pembina County. The Carignans were a big deal in Pembina County. They were a well-regarded farming family with deep roots in the Catholic Church. Good people. His father worked as a local farmhand.
It appears that Harvey's father, August, would have been a farmhand, because I do find evidence that he worked at different farms around the county. And farmhands were necessary in that time because we didn't have mechanization.
That's Zelda Hartya, administrator for the Pembina County Historical Society. She helped me out a lot with this story to help create the picture of Harvey's childhood setting. Farmhands during that time worked long hours, sun up to sundown. That meant August was gone a lot. Harvey's mother, Mary, stayed home to take care of the children and the household. By 1933, Harvey had 3 siblings, Patricia, Clinton, and Francis. And in those early years, things seemed to be okay for Harvey. This is what he said in 1975, when on trial for attempted murder.
I can remember a lot of things. I remember my grandmother buying me shoes. I remember the way I used to play, who I used to play with, my parents, my brother being born, things like that.
But things changed. Harvey was the only child in the family not related by blood to August. And that mattered in 1930s North Dakota. He had the last name, but he wasn't considered a true Carignan. His father, or stepfather, August, also struggled to fit in.
And, sometimes in a family there's a black sheep of the family, and one guy I talked to said, because I said, do you remember your mom, who would have been Harvey's cousin? I said, do you remember her talking about him? And he said, I can remember her going to visit August. But I kind of think this is maybe one of the family members who didn't quite measure up to everybody else. August.
It could have been the woman he married. Even still, August's family members took Harvey in when his mother didn't want him. He was suffering from St. Vitus dance, a neurological disorder that causes involuntary movements, jerky and uncoordinated ones. It's also known to cause anxiety and mood swings. It was typically brought on by the rheumatic fever. The disorder affects children. Harvey's bout lasted until he was a preteen. When he was 11, his parents sent him to Cavalier, North Dakota, to stay with an aunt and uncle from his father's side of the family. A couple of months later, he was sent to stay with his grandmother on his mother's side. She lived in Williams, Minnesota, a small town of roughly 375 people, located near the Canadian border. He said during trial that he wasn't there for long, that he started wetting the bed, and they didn't want to keep him. So he was shuffled over to his mother's sister, who also lived in Williams. All Harvey wanted to do was go home. So he ran away to his home in North Dakota. But 2 months later, he was being sent away again, this time to Mandan Reform School. When he took the stand in 1975, he said his mother first tried to abandon him to an orphanage, but found a judge who would sentence him to the reform school. Harvey said the judge sentenced him because his mother couldn't handle him, and the family couldn't afford treatment for his temporary neurological disorder. That doesn't align with the reasons one would typically be admitted to the school, though.
If you're sent to the Mandan State Industrial School, you've done something bad, and it's like a place of last resort.
In the North Dakota newspaper archives, I found a few stories about kids being sentenced to the reform school. It seemed to be something like a juvenile detention facility, although its stated purpose was rehabilitation. It even had a parole system for kids who were released. Considering we're dealing with records for minors, we weren't able to confirm the exact reason Harvey was sent to Mandan Reform School. We only have his word from trial transcripts. But we do know this. Most kids were released, but Harvey was sentenced there for 7 years, from 12 years old to 19. That was a critical period of development, a time when the adolescent brain is undergoing significant changes, especially in the prefrontal cortex, which plays a critical role in decision-making, impulse control, and behavior regulation. There he sat, without any form of maternal nurturing, and, likely, with an immense sense of abandonment. During his time there, his entire family moved from North Dakota to Duluth, Minnesota, roughly 330 miles away from their North Dakota home. They created a new life together, without Harvey. From the reform school, Harvey joined the Army and was stationed in Alaska. But it only took him a few years before Harvey found himself behind bars again. Harvey was convicted in Alaska in 1949 of murdering 57-year-old Laura Showalter and was sentenced to death by hanging. So what happened? About 6 weeks after Laura Showalter was found dead in an Anchorage city park, a woman named Christine Norton was attacked. She was violently sexually assaulted and escaped. Christine reported the attack to police. Investigators put together a suspect lineup, which included Harvey Carignan. And yes, She identified him as her assailant. At the same time, police were investigating the assault and murder of Laura Showalter. They hadn't made an arrest in that case, but they did have a witness. On the night Laura was killed, a man walking through the city park saw what appeared to be a man and woman lying in the grass. At first, he thought the woman might be in danger, but when he got closer, the man sat up and told him to move on. So the witness left. The next morning, he walked through the park again and found the woman dead. He had gotten a good look at the man the night before and gave police the description. There were enough similarities between Christine's case and Laura's case, so police brought the witness in for the same lineup they had shown Christine, and he picked out the same man, Harvey Carignan. At that point, Harvey had been arrested and charged with the assault with intent to rape Christine Norton. He had not been formally charged in Laura Showalter's death. And that distinction would become very important. While Harvey was being held on the sexual assault charge, police questioned him about Laura's murder. At first, he refused to talk. Then, he asked to see a priest. After meeting with the priest, Harvey agreed to make a statement. He was given a paper and a pencil. And he admitted being with Laura in the park and violently beating her with his fists. The statement was used against him at trial, and Harvey was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. But his defense lawyers challenged the confession. Their argument centered on how and when it had been obtained. Harvey was being held on the sexual assault charge when it happened. He had not been arrested, charged, or brought before a magistrate on the Laura Showalter murder when investigators questioned him about her death. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the confession should not have been admitted. The government appealed that decision, and the United States Supreme Court took the case. Those justices found another problem. Harvey had not been allowed to testify outside the presence of the jury about whether his confession was voluntary. The United States Supreme Court sent the case back, and his conviction was vacated. So Harvey was no longer a convicted murderer, and he wouldn't die with a noose around his neck. The consequences of that decision would be felt by the loved ones of women who would cross paths with Harvey in the decades that followed, including Diane, the 19-year-old nursing student who escaped his attack, and the families of Kathy Schultz and Eileen Hunley, whose bodies were found not long after Diane escaped. Both women had also been beaten in the head with a hammer. And as investigators began to look deeper into Harvey, they found something else. A map. Harvey Carignan's map. It contained 180 marked locations, circled in red. One of them coincided with the area where Kathy Miller's body had been found, leaving detectives with the profound sense that the list of Harvey's victims was even longer than they imagined. Check back next week for part 3 of Crafting a Killer, the Harvey Carignan story. If you're looking for a simple way to support the work we do on The Vault, you can give this podcast a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. The Vault is a Forum Communications podcast. I'm Trisha Taurinskas. Thank you for listening.